Hi, everybody. This is Chris,
This is Matt.
and today we're going to be talking about Ultima III Exodus.
Wonderful game.
Wonderful game. Um, just for if you're new, if you're just coming in, if you've never seen us before, we just want to remind everybody this is not a review of Exodus. We've played it for a month as sort of a game group, sort of like a book club style thing where we'd spend a month playing a game, or in some cases more than a month, and then come and talk about what we thought about it and our opinions on it. Usually lasts about an hour. Doesn't always, but and we will go off the rails repeatedly. There is no script. There are some notes we took, and we just go where it goes. So
Yeah,
that's
we're freewheeling.
freewheeling, freeballing it.
No agenda.
None.
Freewheeling.
Nope.
All right.
All right. To the script. I mean,
Ultima 3, 1983. This came out.
mm-hmm.
Uh, what do you think? Does it show its age?
Depends on what system you're playing it on.
Good answer.
I think if you're playing it on the DOS version, yeah, it shows its age. The
Definitely.
unadjusted. Now you've played multiple versions this time.
Yes. Yep. I played the modified DOS. Someone came up with a really good like retexturing and
Mm-hmm.
added the music, which was huge. To the DOS version. So I played that most of the time. Then I tried the unmodified DOS version, and then I also tinkered around with the Commodore version for a little bit.
How did you feel about the unmodified DOS version?
You know, you had told me that it sucked, uh, and it definitely was the worst of the three, but I didn't think it was too bad.
I just, when the other options are available, don't know why you'd do that to yourself.
True, true. This actually came out for the Nintendo, I think, in like quite a while after these
Yeah,
versions came out, like in 1987, I think.
yeah, I was gonna say 87 or 88. I don't remember exactly where. They made some significant changes to the game, though. It's not a
Yeah,
one for one port, which I don't understand why they made the changes.
I like watched a few videos of it, and it seemed really kind of Nintendo-y is the
Hmm.
only way I can describe it. So maybe that's why.
It's close, but they added in like the flower of ambrosia and other things like that that I don't know. I don't understand why bother doing that. But
Yeah, no one knows. Only Nintendo knows for sure.
yeah. So I mean, but there were a lot of versions. What was your favorite?
Uh I think I liked the Commodore version the best. Like I got some kind of starting with the modified version. I got this kind of like cognitive dissonance because the graphics look like 1993 or 4 graphics, but
Hmm.
the gameplay is pretty dated, for those
Yeah.
standards. So I didn't really get a good feel for its place in gaming history when I played it, the modified DOS version. So I think the Commodore 64 version, like if you have patience, is the best answer. If you don't have patience, I'd probably go ahead with the modified DOS version. We should include a link to that modification because it's kind of hard to.
It's hard to find now because the page that was originally sort of housing it went away. So you might still find dead links that lead you there. So yeah, we'll put a link to it in the notes. Um,
It's
it's
good.
yeah,
It's
it's
good.
it's a good mod.
Yeah, tastefully done, I would say.
Right. You don't feel like anything's been changed completely out of whack. Nothing's been fixed or you're not getting a different game experience. It's just repainting everything.
Yeah,
So, um, yeah, I agree with you on the Commodore version, but I was worried for me that it was nostalgia more than, you know,
quality.
quality. Like, because
Yeah.
this was my. Now, I played Fantasy before this and I played Questron before this for like a weekend each. So,
Mhm.
like, those are my first ones. This was my first computer RPG that was a real party long, involved thing, and it took me a long time to sort of actually get this game. I mean, my hype for it was real because, like, my friend Troy in 8th grade was telling me about this great game for the Commodore that we needed to play that he played over the summer before I met him, and some kid had, but that kid moved away. And he would show me his book of maps and spells and everything he wrote down because we didn't have the manuals because it was a pirated version.
Oh my.
And so all through 8th grade, I heard about this great game and never got to. I kind of got to play it. He had a copy where the boot section worked. Oh, I should do this too. Turn that off, turn that on, get this going. He had a version where the boot section worked, but nothing else did. So I would just load it and look at it at like the intro screen and just be like, I get to play that someday.
Yeah, that's such like a 1980s kid thing to do.
It is. It's
perfect.
You know, kids today would maybe pull up a YouTube video or something on it, but we didn't have that. So I could basically load and watch the little guys dance around at the beginning, and that'll be in this video. I'll show you that too. And then when I got it, like he went away to like robot camp in Eau Claire that summer, and he met somebody else who had it, who then we had to wait 2 months for them to mail us another copy of the disc. And when we got it, I immediately went up, threw it in my computer, made my party, started playing, and went straight to Lord British's castle only to watch the whole game crash.
Oh no.
So I kept, like, I tried going in a couple times. I'm like, uh-oh. Like, I'm in Sauceria. I've waited like a year for this, and I can't go in anywhere. So I went to the town, and I could get in the town, and real quickly discovered I could get in everywhere but Lord British's castle. So I could never raise my hit points. So I had to finish the game without ever raising my hit points. I'm going to pause this for a second so we can, because I want that to just have its own moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful title screen.
Mm-hmm. It's well done.
All 4 colors.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
So I want to go through and explain, like, when I played the game this time, and I'll probably put a bunch of my footage up online. I did it again that same way I did it when I first played it, without ever going back into Lord British's castle. Well, I went into his castle, but I never raised my hit points.
Yeah, you beat it with 150 hit points.
Beat it with 150 hit points.
I watched it, and I was quite impressed because you have far more patience than I do, you know, to get through it, and on the Commodore too. Like, oh man, it's so slow, and like you got to wait so long just to heal your dudes up. I was very impressed with your initiative.
You don't have to wait very long when they only have 150 hit points.
That is true. But you have to wait more frequently.
You have to wait more frequently, and the magic points are kind of you burn through them fast.
Yeah.
Because you can't just like, oh, well, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Stop talking about me for a second. Get back talking about the game. This is... I will never get sick of this part here.
Oh, it's so good.
It always makes me happy. Seeing the little guys fight the dragon, and they go back, and they go forth.
Yeah, it's full of drama. Like, if you're waiting for the next season of Game of Thrones.
And they're gone.
There you go. Yep. Just watch that, man. You'll be fine till March or whenever it comes out.
Oh my god. I don't even think it's coming out next year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's some talk that it's going to take them longer to get all the footage and everything done. So
they can't, because George R.R. Martin's going to be dead by then. We all know it's on the horizon.
Well,
he's going to die.
He's told the ending to the directors, and
yeah, they can't be trusted. They're going to mess it up.
Screw those guys.
Yep.
We need him.
George R.R. Martin. You need him alive.
You do. But they should have started shooting. I know we're way off topic, but they should have started shooting. So hopefully it won't be too bad. I'm just waiting for this next part because I want to talk a little bit about the music and I want to turn the audio back on for that because the music I think is really good.
Yeah, it's catchy. It's like old, sounding. It sounds appropriate for the game. I really liked the music in this game.
Yeah. I mean, it's of all the Ultimas, it's the music I still remember. I've
Yeah,
played all of them, and I remember Ultima 3's music. I can hum it in my head. I don't remember Ultima 4's music, or 5's, or 7's.
yeah. I don't remember 4. The music was done by Ken Arnold,
Mm-hmm.
and after he made the Ultima video games, he went on to program firmware at like Hewlett Packard or something.
Okay.
It's an interesting.
Yeah.
I think he still tinkers with music. Like I looked him up on LinkedIn the other day. He still tinkers with music, but the Ultima games was like he worked on most of them, but that was his foray.
Off topic, while we're waiting for this to kind of kick in, you looked up somebody else on LinkedIn.
Oh, Catherine, right?
Has she gotten back to you? Has she told you what the numbers mean?
No,
Oh, Catherine!
She accepted my friend request though. Catherine, yeah, was the lead developer on Stronghold.
Yeah.
And when we were playing, we got a message that said, like, error code 3213, give Catherine both numbers. So I gave them to her, but she hasn't gotten back to me yet on that.
Okay, here we got the music. I'll just let it play. I know you can't hear it. And it's got that nice, I'll actually just let it play real quietly in the background there. It's got that nice, like 16, 4-voice MIDI, not MIDI, but you know what I mean, like Sid Chip 80s sound that,
Yep.
like a little buzz to it and a little, and if you let this screen go, it'll play through all the songs in the game. So,
yeah, which you might want to do because it's kind of fun to watch this little,
yeah,
play that's going on here. Like, kind of tells a story. It's fun to watch.
3, 4, and 5 all had this little play, and I really appreciated that. I don't remember if 6 did. I don't think so. 6 started trying to update production values, and
My story about Ultima is that I don't have one. So, like, I didn't. I think I played. The first one I played was like, Underworld, I think.
Yeah.
It was the first person one.
Yeah.
Is that Underworld?
That's Underworld. And that's crazy to me that you missed all of them. You played Questron, and you had an apple, and you kind of came up out of that time, and you missed.
I missed the boat.
You missed the boat.
I didn't have a Troy to, like, talk it up.
Drag you into it. Yep. Nope.
Yeah. So, then we played 4 on this show, and I got why it was a great, entry in gaming history. But to me, like, I enjoyed 3 so much more because 3 is what makes old games so great.
Yeah.
Like the weirdness, the pacing, the puzzles without any help.
Right.
That's
and
like,
some of the puzzles are just dirty.
Right.
They're just dirty. They're just not fair.
Nope. But so I enjoyed playing 3 way more than 4, but I think 4 was probably a more significant historical, whatever.
I think 3 was his incorporation of working elements from other games into his tile-based system. Bringing in a party, trying to, weave more of a cohesive story. Like in 1 and 2, you just figured stuff out, and once you figured out enough stuff, you were in position to win the game, and you won the game.
Yeah.
Where with 3, there was a trail of breadcrumbs that led you to things that, gave you the hints on what you needed to win the game. And you got to build a party. You got to, really invest yourself into things and play the way you want. And
Yeah, and uh, I like that in old games where they just and like Questron did this. A lot of games did this. They just kind of dump you into the game, and
Yeah.
you're kind of on your own, and like a lot of it is just exploring and finding things and
Yep.
tinkering around, and I love that about these games.
No, it's really, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Like we were saying, Ultima 4 is a better role playing game, where Ultima 3 is a role playing game. And I find myself going back and playing 3 again and again and again and again and again. I find myself playing 1 again and again and again and again and again. I don't find myself playing 4 or 5 repeatedly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally get that. Like I haven't really had much desire to go back and play 4, but like I think I'm gonna go ahead and probably finish this on my own. I don't know. We might spend some more time talking about it on a future show, or we might not. We're just gonna kind of play it by ear. But I'm loving like the game. I've probably played this more than any other game.
I've got a fuzzy in the room with me.
Yeah, that's one thing that I thought was strange about this character creation screen was that, it's the player races are kind of weird. There's a couple of them like Bobbit and Fuzzy.
Yeah,
and that's fine. Like I obviously we all know what Bobbit is. It's a open source Hobbit.
I was gonna say it's a dodge of litigation from the Tolkien estates.
Exactly. But the thing that's strange about it is, like, you would expect, Richard Garriott's going to include like a book that thick about the history of the Bobbits and what they are, but there's nothing in the manual about them at all. Like, there's no description of what they look like, no nothing. So you're just kind of.
So that's something I think's interesting about all of Garriott's games, and I didn't think about that till you just mentioned it just now. He fleshes out the world. You know what's happening in the town of Britain today. You know what's happening in the castle today. You know what's happening currently in his game worlds. I don't know that I can tell you the history. Like before Ultima 1, there's no explanation of where the elves come from or where any of that stuff comes from. It's just sort of, this is where we are today. This is what you need to know. But there's no history. Why did he suddenly pick out the virtues he does in the next game? That's never explained. We're here now, and it's always we're here now.
Mm-hmm. It all kind of is centered around this Lord British as like the main driving plot point. Like, it's always Lord British needs something, or Lord British this, Lord British that. So it's just kind of like, well, you just got to have faith in the man. in the LCB.
You kind of do in the LCB. What I see in the notes, you've got the C stands for, and then it's highlighted out. Shall I unhighlight it?
Yeah. See, and I want to hear you pronounce it.
Cantabrian? Cantabrian? Cantabrigian?
You know how I know that? I Googled it.
Did you Google it?
There's a thing, like, you can't hear it, but I'm hitting it right now, and it's saying in my ear, Cantabrigian. Relating to Cambridge in England or Cambridge University.
I love that I guessed like 6 different ways of saying it, and none of them are right.
Not one. Nope. And I didn't remember. I had listened to it right before we started. I got like a mental block. I can't remember how to pronounce Cantabrigian.
Okay, well, while we're talking about LCB there on screen, actually, as we walk by it, because you can't talk about the Ultimas without talking about him.
Nope. He is Ultima.
Yes. Yeah. And when EA tried to like make Lady British in their mobile-only game, or the stuff they've done with Ultima Online, the soul's gone.
Yeah.
The soul's absolutely... The Ultima Soul is Lord British, and anytime you diminish his role in the thing, you can buy the name and the characters and the tiles and the whole thing, but you're not going to get the game.
Right? Yeah, and like I've always kind of thought, like, I've always kind of poked fun at Lord British, Richard Garriott, because he puts himself in his games, and he is Lord British outside of the game. Like, there's pictures of him wearing like helmets and shit, and it's, you know, it's kind of ridiculous. But when you think about like, he was a kid, and everyone told him not to make these games, and he did it, and he was very successful at it. He deserves to have that, kind of craziness. Right. Like, he launched himself into space and stuff. It's just like, really interesting.
Yeah, what I love is his dad was an astronaut, Owen Garriott. And his dad got there through like science and study and being a pilot and doing all that. And his son made video games until he could afford to just buy a ticket.
I would be so pissed if I were his dad.
I kind of would too, right?
Yeah.
Like, really? Shit, I did this the wrong way.
Yep. Who knew? Just like make video games in the 80s and you can do whatever you want.
But I
drive around in a Ferrari like Richard Carmack.
Oh, he was like, well, in Garriott too, back in the day, he was one of the first Rockstar game developer, programmer people. Because he's so... I'm trying to find a quote here. But
yeah, he was just... But the thing is, like, he never got less goofy. Like, was always goofy. He, he wore the crown and the whole 9 yards. It's wonderful. It's great. He never became like too cool for school,
Right. No, he never became cool.
No. Nope. Sorry, Gary.
Sorry. I mean, and he knows. I mean, you can't know. Well, and so one of the things we talk about is like he puts himself in his games. Like Lord British is in there, and that's his alter ego in his game. And everybody goes, well, that's sort of his thing. That's what makes him special. No, I know, like, in the Wizardry, in the first Wizardry, a lot of the names are anagrams for the developers. Lots of people put themselves in their games. He's one who brought his character out of his game, and he's that character. That's the difference. That's
what's special, yep.
That's what's special. And he pulls it off. Like, nobody pulls him aside and goes, I'd like you to meet my psychiatrist friend.
Right.
And people call him Lord British. I still I know his name's Richard Garriott, but in my mind he's Lord British. He's completely pulled that out, and he's able to run these two merged competing personas. I found the quote I was looking for.
All right,
you're talking about Garriott, making Ultimas, and if it's not a Garriott making an Ultima, it's not an Ultima. It's not a game. It makes real worlds with a 40-watt bulb, and there's icing packets, but the secret ingredient is always love, damn it.
Perfect. Captain Murphy, right?
Captain Murphy, talking about his Easy Bake Oven.
Yeah.
I changed it a little bit, but that's okay.
That's perfect.
Yeah. But it is. His love of what he's doing here is what makes it special. The moment you try to formulate this or turn it into something standardized, or chase whatever the current trend in gaming is or anything like that, it starts falling apart. And I really think you see that in the series starting with Ultima 6, where he's bringing on bigger and bigger teams. And the game is less and less his. And it starts homogenizing until you get to 9, where basically he's there in name and he kind of oversees some stuff. But I saw interviews where he's talking about he's playing the game and doesn't know where they've hidden gold, and that he's kind of confused as to why you've got to rob the peasants to have enough money to buy weapons, and how much of it's changed from his vision and his way of doing things, where this was all him. This was him sitting down on the computers. I mean, people did the conversions to other systems, and I'm bringing that up because while we give Chuckles a ton of shit, Chuckles did the C64 conversion, and that's my favorite one.
Yep. This one's for Chuckles. He did a good job.
He did a good job. Chuckles,
I'm still
good job,
pissed
Chuckles.
about Auto Duel, but you did good on Ultima 3.
Well, and one of the things I found out, I don't remember what I was looking up. Somebody was doing something sort of modern, another Apple II, and they were going to put it out on the Apple II and Commodore at the same time. And I thought, that seems like a lot of work for, what's essentially a hobby at this moment. You're not still doing that.
Yeah.
And I found out that since they're the same processor, other than some I/O machine language changes and a couple graphics pointers, the code runs the same if you did it in machine language assembly language.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that it's mostly addressing the same spots, it's going to the same thing. So it's not as those two systems were kind of hand in hand with each other,
Mm-hmm.
which only makes me question the difference in price all the more.
Right. Right. I had both as a kid, but we had the Commodore when I was super young, so I don't really remember playing anything on it other than like Parsec, I think.
That's TI.
Oh, that was TI? Oh, man. Maybe I never had a Commodore then.
Maybe not. You had a Texas Instruments. Which then means, why did you not have Hunt the Wumpus?
I got blind spots, man. I had never played Ultima. I never played Hunt the Wumpus. Just a whole lot of Questron.
A whole lot of Questron. Well, we'll forgive you because you played Questron.
Yeah. That's passable.
More than makes up for it. Did we mention that this was Origin's first game?
No. That to me is like the zenith of the story. Like this was, he started his own company. This was like it.
Right. Well, he had been getting just hosed by other developers. So like he started out, California Pacific got a copy of his game at Calabeth, and they're like, what if you stopped doing it in baggies and we sold it? Because he sold 12 copies of the original, and somehow one made it from Texas to California, and the guy there played it, liked it, got a hold of him. I've heard Garriott not remember how it got there, and I seem to remember in other interviews, books and stuff, he said the guy who his manager at the computer store sent it in. I don't know for sure anymore because I've seen both sides, but somehow it got out to California, and he, high school senior year was making six figures, which was sort of, when I heard that, that's kind of what got me to start taking computers seriously. I'd always been interested in them, but the thought of being able to play games and make more money, it's like, okay, let's see what I can, where I can go with this, and then learned I loved programming. So, yeah. But then after that, California Pacific, according to Garriott, spent all the money on like drugs, and so didn't really pay him right and broke his contract and all that, starting his long career of being screwed by publishers.
Shit.
Yep. And then he went to Sierra and made Ultima II, and they kind of...
That seems like a bad fit. I think
it's a bad fit game-wise.
Sierra was a good company, I thought. Because, they had a pretty illustrious career, but...
Yeah, they did stuff. And my understanding is there were two problems, basically. One is it wasn't a fit game style-wise. Ken Williams did not understand what he's trying to do here. But he was the one who, offered the most money and most feelies and stuff for what Garriott wanted to do. Like, he wanted a box. He wanted to get out of baggies. He wanted this to be in a box. He wanted a map. He wanted stuff with it. And they said, sure. And then he got there, and him and Ken Williams rubbed each other the wrong way, not only due to game design, but due to control over things. It turns out, like, for Ultima II, they used some rule in the contract where they had other people do ports of the game instead of Garriott's entourage, which meant Garriott got a smaller cut. And so he was like, you know what? What if I just go do this myself? And so him, his dad, his brother, and Chuckles were the four first people in Origin, and kind of hinged it all on this game. And all of them were like, well, this is a fun hobby, and we'll get to see how long we ride it out. And his dad's like, okay, as soon as you're done with this, you're going back to college.
Yep.
And then this was a runaway success.
Yeah, they released a lot of
Mm-hmm.
games. Like I don't remember when Origin went out of business, but I remember buying a whole bunch of Origin games of all different
Yeah.
types. There was that. What was the Jet one? I used to love that game.
Strike Commander?
Strike Commander. That was badass. I bought a new computer just to play that shit.
Origin liked to push tech.
Yeah.
Like,
Right, because
no
didn't
two
they
ways
do like
about it.
Comanche and all those voxel games?
So I think what you're thinking about is for a while as a sort of subsidiary development group under Origin was Jane's Flight Sims. Now, Jane's are actually the people who write the technical manuals for military hardware, or at least were at the time. So then they decided to make games as well to kind of make simulators based on this
Yeah,
military hardware. So let's jump to
yeah.
Wikipedia
Those
here.
were all good stuff. All those Jane's games were pretty fun.
2004. They went out in 2004.
Oh, rest in peace.
Rest in peace. They went out whenever Garriott left, but they went out in 2004 finally. Some of us are still bitter that EA has a Origin shop.
Yeah.
We're like, you don't deserve their name.
Right. I agree with that. Not a fan.
Not a fan. Well, so I might as well tell this story since we're off the rails and telling Origin stories more than Ultima stories at the moment. If you like this game, if you like Ultima 3, but you played it and you're like, I want this, but different, Deathlord. You should play Deathlord. And, walk, don't run, go get Deathlord. You're going to have a good time. It's this without the 3D dungeons. It's 2D stuff, and we'll talk about why that's important later. But why that's important in this conversation and why I just remembered it to bring it up. Garriott was making a deal with EA at the time to be their publisher for games back in 88-ish. And that deal would have been big. It would have gotten Ultimas on the shelves at Targets. It would have been something that put them in places that didn't otherwise put them in places. That's why I saw Bard's Tale 2 at Targets, but I didn't see Ultima there. You have to go to a computer store or a magazine or something else to get an Ultima, which I can't imagine how big this would have been if he was able to get it in your Targets, in your Walmarts, in your other places like that.
Yeah.
Your Shopkos and your basic department stores. But while he's walking around EA, Trip Hawkins, the head of EA at the time, either showed him or he saw it at a thing, but he saw Deathlord. And he basically was like, you're stealing my game. And if you don't, fork it over, if you don't stop production on that game, we're not going to get into business with you. And at the time, EA was way bigger than Origin. And they're like, all right, goodbye. I don't know what to tell you. We're making this game. Deal with it. Sue us if you gotta. So Garriott walked away. And a lot of people might not even know that story, might not even know that happened. But a few years later, Garriott's brother is like, I love you guys. My, love and everything is in finance, but I want to do something other than run a video game company. I want to do some other financial things. I'm getting out. You're going to need to find someone else to be your businessy thing. So they didn't really have enough money to keep going the way they were going, and they had to sell to EA.
Oh, heartbreaking.
And if they had maybe just held their nose and eaten it with the Deathlord thing, they might have had the money to not sell.
But you don't object to Deathlord on moral principles?
Not at all.
Because what it did to Lord British.
There's one thing about Deathlord, and we'll talk about it again when we eventually cover Deathlord, that's sort of a sad story about it. This guy had written it to be a Norse super game. Norse and Teutonic world. And I guess somebody, some high up at EA was like, Final Fantasy and Japanese RPGs are all the rage. Make this you know, Japanese themed.
Hmm.
Go. And he's like, I got like 2 weeks left. Like, we're almost done. What do you mean make this Japanese themed? And so he
Oh,
had to relabel a bunch of stuff and redo a bunch of some basic sprites. And you'll find places in the game of what towns were supposed to be called instead
hmm.
of what they're called. And it's very obvious, like Toshi are elves and something else is dwarves. And like not everything get covered. And the farther you get away from the main continent, the more these old influence show up. The manual
Interesting.
is rough because he had to redo the manual on a moment's notice.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing had to be rewritten and redone. And it's too bad. I think if they had left it alone, it would have felt more polished. That said, it's a great game. It's
Hmm.
a great game. It's. I was thinking about this the other day. The way I would describe it is if this was third edition Dungeons and Dragons. If Ultima 3 was third edition Dungeons and Dragons, Ultima 4 is like fourth edition Dungeons and Dragons. Took a lot of the rules out, a lot of the grindy bits out, and focused on story, focused on
Hmm.
that side of things, and character development, and that became a centerpiece to it. Deathlord is Pathfinder. It's like, no, we want to keep the rules. We want to keep some of that stuff and maybe even enhance it in some ways and follow that path down. So if you're like, Ultima 4 is too much story for me, I want to just explore and, you know, a giant, giant, giant world and kill lots of monsters and enjoy the grind, Deathlord.
Hmm.
Deathlord.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to us playing that.
Yeah.
You've been big on Deathlord, I think, for years. I think since I've known you, you've been an advocate for Deathlord.
Well, like when we worked at the hospital together, which was late 90s, I'd been playing Deathlord for like 10 years. I didn't have a lot of computers, and Deathlord would be one I'd go back and play. And started like a little news group you can on like a GeoCities site. Like me and a bunch of guys got together and we're comparing notes and drawing maps up together. And 10 years after I'd been playing it, and 10 years after they'd been playing it, we were comparing notes, and we were missing huge chunks of each other's maps. There were things that
Wow.
we hadn't discovered together that we were people who really knew the game. Like some people had gone through and done sector edits to find out how much damage stuff had done and really dug in, and mysteries were still being found by hardcore fans of the game. And I'm betting that's still true today. There is a dungeon level in there that I don't know what it does.
Hmm.
I don't understand why it's there. It's there. It's definitely there. But it's too small. If that makes any sense. So like in Deathlord, because it's tile, everything fits on a sheet of graph paper,
Hmm. Good call.
right?
Good
And
design
like
choice.
exactly on a sheet of graph paper. So the dungeon stairs when you start are always in the same spot, and then it fits exactly on a sheet of graph paper. So proper design.
Yeah.
But you go down to level 4 of this one dungeon. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 or 5, somewhere down there, and it's not even a quarter of one sheet of graph paper. It's a little room, and you're
Hmm.
like, nope, this is not right. There's more to this level, and I can't find it.
Hmm.
And considering it took me years before I found the second level of the starting dungeon, I don't know what I got to do to find it, but I know it's there. And I think that's
Yeah.
awesome. I think that a game this far after can still hold my attention. That's
Right.
awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like not to distract
From
our
Ultima, which is what
Deathlord
we're supposed to be talking
talk, but
about.
the I thought the world map in Ultima 3 was quite small. It's
Yes.
and it wraps around itself, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I was surprised at how small the world is because you think about these games, the world's always huge.
Huge. Well, and like when I played it, and it was the sort of only game like this I'd ever played, the world felt huge. It was 64 by 64, and there were 8 towns, and there were 7 dungeons, and there was all this place to go, and it took a while to walk around. And then Ultima 4 came out, And oop, wrong thing. Turn that off. Turn that on for a second. I'm gonna get a new thing going here. But like Ultima 4 came out, and it was 128 by 128, so 4 times the size. And then Ultima 5 came out. It's 256 by 256. Now you've got this huge world with more villages and towns and dungeons and little huts to explore. And yeah, they kept getting bigger. Ultima 3 is maybe one of the smallest overworlds in the Ultima games.
Yeah, I kind of liked it though, because there's stuff that's just tucked away, and like
Yes.
you're still discovering things, but you can get everywhere really quickly, and the overland combat is not burdensome,
No.
which I really like. Like it is, because they just dump you in the game. It feels kind of grindy at the beginning because you don't really know what you're doing. You're just kind of exploring. But not having it be just constant overland combat really
Right.
made the grind like way more enjoyable.
Yeah.
It wasn't a burden
No.
to like walk around. You can explore, you get in the shit every once in a while, but it's, you can, a lot of times you just repound your way out of it.
Mm-hmm. You really can. It's and we were kind of talking about this. I think the thing that this small a map really let him do is everywhere feels special. Like when you walk up to a dungeon, that little dungeon, 8x8 set of tiles is crafted to give and invoke a feeling about that dungeon.
Which is strange because the insides of the dungeon all look the same. They're super boring.
They're super boring, and yet, let me see if I can find this. I want to pull this up. The thing I think about, I'm going to look up maps for Dungeon Fire of Ultima 3. Because that to me has always been one of the more interesting dungeons. Is this it? Yeah, this is it. Okay. I'm going to pull this over here for a second. Boop, boop.
Very nice.
So, when you're in the dungeon, it's just gray lines. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing else to it but gray hallways, and we'll see that in the recording here in a little bit. But when you look at it as you're drawing it on the map, in my mind, this dungeon was always, this is handcrafted by people. Like these are all carved out. This is crypts in my mind. And then you get down to here and you get to the bottom where it empties into cavern because you've got all these wide open spaces. And then all these T traps. I was like, well, this is lava because you're in the... No. I had this imaginary dungeon in my head because I drew the maps and looked at it and went, oh, this must be what this means. I have no doubt he didn't give that much of a care as to like try to come up with a story, but in my head, it that's where I went. And, I think they're interesting from a design standpoint when you're looking at them as a map, but they're not interesting just looking down the gray hallways. They're not.
Yeah, they're not visually interesting. I mean, the designs are consistently pretty good, and like I like that they tell you the direction you're facing and everything.
Mm-hmm. That was nice.
The interface is good.
Mm-hmm.
I have no beef with that, but they do kind of get boring because you find one and like you said, it looks different. It's exciting, but then you get in there, it's like, oh, maybe your torch gets blown out, or there's interesting things that happen, but they don't feel as special as they seem like from the outside.
No, Dungeon Force doesn't really look any different than Dungeon Snake, doesn't look any different from the Dungeon Fire, doesn't look any different from the Perennian Depths, doesn't look any different from any of the other dungeons. They're dungeons. There's some interesting moments in each dungeon, but they're not as part of the map. They're just, you step on this tile and then this pops up.
I imagine it's a function of just like the limitations of the systems, and like deciding to go with a first person
Well,
view
right.
probably was limiting, because the tile sets are used very well in the
Mhm.
overland map, but they probably didn't have that option
And
for the
you know,
first person.
we're kind of on them, but like comparatively, like this was a big step up from. Let's just do one of these. Boop. Ultima 1 dungeons,
Oof.
right? They this ray drawn line. Zoom in on that. Like that's what they used to look like. So
I like that.
I like it
That's
too, but I
that's
get what he's trying to
Questron.
do.
Yeah, right.
You know, he's trying to step it up, trying to make it better. But
Yeah, yeah.
so
Did you what'd you think of the manual for this thing?
so I think you and I have different views on the manual.
My view, I'll go first,
You go first.
is that the manual sucks. Like the
Yeah.
game manual, as far as a guide for how to play the game, not the best. It's like the old timey language kind of falls flat. It doesn't explain things very well.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a table that tells you how your magic points work, but then there'll be like a block of text that kind of explains it in a totally roundabout, unnecessary way.
He was
Like just
starting to experiment with that storytelling, and it's not there yet. It's just not there yet, and I get it. Um, my big gripe is actually the last paragraph of the book. One possible clue as to the identity of thy nemesis has been discovered. A derelict merchant ship was recently towed into port. No crewmen were aboard, alive or dead. Everyone had vanished as if plucked by some evil force off the boat. The only thing found was a word written in blood on the deck. Exodus. Steal Dracula much? Like, I don't know why that bothers me either. It's such a petty, small, nitpicky piece of
it's
bullshit to get
it's because it's
upset
like
about.
unapologetically Dracula.
Unapologetically Dracula. Um, yeah, I have the Ultima 2 box, so and the good old cloth map, which
Oh,
I'm a little bummed about because I've got this cloth map and somebody, not me, because I had to get this on eBay long after the fact, uh, started using some sort of highlighter
oh,
to draw the towns on the map.
you morons.
Mm. And, you know, buying the map alone is like $60.
Yeah.
Yeah, the maps are heirloom type thing. So you didn't like that? Did you even like the monster descriptions?
Uh,
Did you get into that at all, or the town descriptions, or did you just have a problem that when he talked about like
I just
stat
like,
stuff it was badly done?
yeah, like as a guide on how to play the game, it was badly done. Like the spell manuals and the lore is great,
Mm-hmm.
but uh, I've gotten in the habit of learning how to play these things from the manuals, and I didn't really I didn't really learn much about how to play it. So like, there's like a reference card that tells you all the commands. So that's really all you need to
Mm-hmm.
dive in. I mean, I'd still definitely read the spell books because they're really good.
The spell books are awesome.
Yeah.
I am gonna have to kind of like call you out on saying that though, because like when we looked at the Questron manuals, those things had no rules, none, no gameplay, how to do it.
I feel like Ultima tried and failed.
Fair enough.
I Questron barely even tried. What was there were like I don't know. I'm trying to remember what specifically. Like I liked the. I got a huge kick out of the anachronism. You must follow the arcane rituals on the back of the player reference card. I thought that was great.
That
That's
is
pretty
great.
funny. Like, and I didn't know what the arcane ritual was. It's like making a copy of the disc. I thought it was like mailing in the registration or something.
No, you got to make a copy of the disc for like two reasons. One, it's write protected. Like there's no hole to write back to the disc, so you can't save your game unless you're playing on a copy. Two, dungeons, towns, castles, all reset when you enter and leave. They are sort of frozen in time like Brigadoon. The world and your number of moves, which is kind of your score, playing by golf rules here, trying to keep it low.
Right.
That does not. So if you kill something on the surface and there's a chest left, that chest is there until you go get it. If there's a bunch of monsters spawned, usually around Devil Guard, which will happen because you can only get there by Moongate, so you'll be running around doing stuff, and then go into Devil Guard and you'll see this army of monsters, and you just got to kind of wade through them your whole way. I mean, that's permanent. That stays there. So if you want to start fresh, if you want to start with 0 score and no monsters in the game and everything back the way it is, you need a master copy that you pull from. This was my problem with the ROMs too. It took me a long time to find anything, if I wanted to do it on a ROM, where I could start from that 0 point. Most of the ROMs out there are either there's one that's a hack where the whirlpool is like stuck and isn't moving. And there's some other weird stuff about it. It just feels off, and you're starting several how many moves into it. You're not getting a fresh, empty game. And then another one where it's a similar thing. You're just not getting that completely blank experience. So if you're looking for the ROMs, you're going to look for the .nib files, and you're going to have to either transfer them onto an actual C64 disk, or there's some converters that let you, but that is harder than like you trying to get the patch working on the DOS version. And I think most people, if they play today, what they're going to do is they're going to go to Good Old Games, they're going to get the DOS version, and they're going to apply the patch, and they're going to have a good time.
Yeah, that's probably, like, if I were going to recommend this to someone, that's probably how I'd recommend that they play it, because just because of the load times on the Commodore. That's the only reason.
Right, and like I said to you, if that's really bothering you, use the save states on like Vice so that you can skip that entire intro load situation and go from there.
Yeah, that's a wise piece of advice, because they are quite long. Like I don't know, I haven't really noticed it so much. I guess I noticed at the beginning when we first started talking that you started the video and then there was like this 5-minute thing where we just prattled on about Deathlord or whatever. where like I thought nothing was happening.
Where I couldn't get your ass to shut up. It's Ultima Chris, chop chop, let's go.
Yeah, well, you know, but yeah, the load times are rough on the Commodore. But you have to tinker with if you want to do the patch, like you'll probably have to mess with it, and you'll have to mess with the timing in DOSBox to get it to run right. So you know you're never totally free from a little bit of troubleshooting with these old games. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. Lord British seems like an okay guy.
We're literally watching him burn and drown people in his private torture chamber.
Could be worse.
How?
He could be forcing them to watch our show.